How's it going, everybody? I want to show you, in my last video, I mentioned that you can use a folding knife, like this one here, my Ontario Rat 1, that you can use a folding knife to baton through wood. And I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to do that today. And this is going to be universal for all folding knives. Regardless of the knife, this is the method that I would use. Now, let me get this out of the way right now. I know that some of you are thinking with a critical mind saying, why on earth would you baton through wood with a folding knife? There are far better tools to do that job, and realistically, you're probably just going to damage your knife. Now, I actually don't disagree with you on that. There are far better tools to baton through wood, right? And by baton, I mean taking this knife and using it as a wedge on a piece of wood and hitting it to drive it through and splitting wood down to a smaller size. There are far better tools suited for that purpose than a folder. In fact, I think a folder is probably one of the worst tools you could use to split through wood. A fixed blade knife would be far superior, or even better than that, an axe. Why on earth would I show you how to do this with the folder? Here's my thought process. A survival situation is a situation that's less than ideal. You're not there because you want to be there. You didn't go into this prepared. You're in this situation because it's a bad situation. The reality of you being in a situation and having all of those better tools, such as your axe, your saw, your fixed blade knife, the reality of you being in a situation with that is far less likely than you being stuck in a situation with what? What you have on you at all times, your folding knife, okay? And this is a technique that I don't do on a regular basis, but it's a good skill to have in case you do need to do it. And the reality is, you would think that it would stand to reason that if you're going to practice and train for survival situation scenarios, you would want to train with the tool you're most likely going to have on you, which is your folding knife, regardless of whatever knife that is. Now, all knives are built to different quality. The Rat 1 happens to be very good quality, so I know it's going to stand up just fine. But again, regardless of the folding knife that you're using, this is the method that I would use, and it's guaranteed to be the safest and to do virtually no damage to your knife. So without further ado, let me go ahead and show you, cut over, and we'll go ahead and split a piece of wood. Now, before we even start with this, I want to go over some basics of knife truth, I guess. I'm trying to think of the right word here, which is a folding knife is, well, it's like the name implies, a knife that folds, right? And the weakest point of a folding knife is always going to be the joint right here. And in particular, on locking folding knives, it's always going to be the lock. And in this case, we're looking at a liner lock knife. Do you see this little spring right here? This is what's keeping the blade from closing. Now, when you're batoning on a knife, it's where you hit this side of the knife. You are putting an incredible amount of strain on that joint. And all of this downward pressure is going to push down on this spring. See how it locks into place? Watch this. I want you to focus on this. It's going to lock, if I can get to focus. See how it just popped into place? That is the only thing that's keeping this blade from closing. And if you're batoning, it's going to push on it. Now, I've seen it happen with actually a Rat 1 folder because I was being dumb. I was batoning on it, and I actually bent the clip. And then it won't lock, right? So that's what we're going to avoid doing today. So remember, folding knives, their weakest point is always going to be the joint. Now remember, this is a less than ideal situation. We don't do this on a regular basis. This is in lieu of training for a survival scenario. And batoning wood is one of the most essential things you can do, especially if you're trying to break down pieces of wood into smaller pieces and so on and so forth. And so this is a valuable skill to have. But just remember, when we're going, I just want to show you how this works. The joint is always the weakest point of the knife. So that's what we're going to try and work around in this tutorial today. Now, it goes without saying, but the first piece of material you're going to need to baton through wood is a baton. And in this case, it's just a piece of stick that I found on the ground. It happens to be dry, and it'll definitely get the job done. Don't overthink it, you guys. If you have time to make a nice baton, make one. But just get yourself a hefty stick if you're in a pinch. It will always do the job. Next, you need your piece of wood that you're going to baton. Again, this is clearly rocket science, you guys. In this case, I grabbed a nice, small little piece of wood. And realistically, you could do a little bit bigger, but this is probably about as big as you want to do with your folding knife. But you could technically go up to, you could even baton something as large as this. But you just don't want to put too much strain on your knife because think about it, you don't want to damage it. So, But here, in this case, here's what we're going to do. Now, we're going to baton this piece of wood. Now, on a normal fixed blade knife, you just simply place it like so, and you hit here and alternate back and forth. Here, then here, here, then here, as you slowly work your knife down through it like a wedge. We do not want to do that with our folding knife because remember, all of that pressure is going to be on this lock and on this joint, and that's going to damage it. The temptation will be, well, I can just put it here, and if I just gently hit here, then maybe I won't put any pressure on the spine necessarily on this joint. That's not going to happen, you guys. It's still going to put that pressure on that joint, and you're still going to damage your knife. What's the workaround? It's simple. You take the knife and you dislocate its lock. You disengage it and fold it halfway. Now, this knife is floating free. There is no tension on that joint, which means you can then take your knife, place it here on your piece of wood, and baton it like you would a normal knife. Just like this. And I'm going to come over here to this side. This is why you alternate. So you go here. Now you see, as I'm hitting, there is no pressure on this joint. So it's not going to put any damage on the spring or the swivel. It's just floating free. I'm driving it in. And down the knife like so. And right about here, you could just put your finger in and just split it yourself. Woohoo! Almost took the camera with me. Now, there is a second hack that I'm going to show you guys what to do. Let's say the piece of wood is pretty substantial, okay? And you're trying to split it, but you don't want to ruin your knife or you're worried it might damage it because of the size. What you want to create next is a wedge. A wedge can be anything. Just this piece of wood right here will work. And what you're going to do is create a wedge shape. Okay, see what I created here? I just created a blade sort of wedge shape piece of wood. Now I'm going to show you guys, again, this is going to be on a smaller scale, but I'm going to do the same thing I did last time. Let's say there's a big knot in the piece of wood that I need to split, right? I fold my knife so that, remember, this joint is swinging free. Then I'm going to baton the knife into place, okay? Again, keeping that joint free. Now this is kind of cheating. This piece of wood's so dry, I mean, I could just split it. But the idea is you take your wedge and you place it inside that joint. You see that? And the second I push this in here, it's going to wiggle this knife free. So I can just pull the knife out now. The knife is free. I can fold it. You should put that in your pocket, otherwise you might lose stuff, okay? That stuff gets lost. And you put your wedge in there. Now, you're going to treat this wedge just like a fixed blade knife. Just like that. It'll split your piece of wood. That is another great way of being able to save your knife. You guys, if you're in a situation, it's not necessarily about how hard you're working. This is so cliche, I know. But it's about how smart you're working. If I had a fixed blade, just my folder, in a survival situation, the first two tools that I would create before anything else is I would get myself a baton and I'd make myself a wedge. This one's a little smaller than I would normally do. For a wedge, you do want dry wood because it'll last longer for one. It'll slide through the wood easier too. But get yourself a nice wedge that has a long enough handle that you can ideally beat on it. And you could even make, think like a draw knife. So actually, let's make one of those, a longer wedge. Now this piece of wood is substantially thinner than I would use as a long-term, well, it's called the draw knife wedge, okay? But this is nearby, it's what I have, and it'll serve the purpose. What I'm gonna do is leave it long on one end, long on the other, but the middle part I'm gonna taper out into that wedge shape. I went ahead and I made 2 marks for right about the area, the width that I want my wedge to be, and I'm gonna go ahead and carve that out. All right, coming back, here's what I've done. you see how I've kind of worn this out here? I've got it wide on the back end and I've got it tapered down in the front because again, this is going to be a wedge. Now this handle, this gives me a lot more room to hit it here and here and help me drive it down. Again, this piece is really light, so the likelihood of it breaking very quickly is almost guaranteed. In fact, it is guaranteed, but you get the idea. I would make myself a baton and a series of wedges, one of them being like this and another one being just a simple, nice fat wedge that I could then drive in. And you can split anything with this. I mean, think about the pioneers back in the old days. If they didn't have a set of steel wedges, they were making wooden wedges and using their hammers to drive it in. That's all this is just Stone Age version. You could even use rocks. You know, if you get a good stone that's wedge shaped, even better. Think smart, right? We want to think around the box, or think outside the box in order to get the job done. I hope that helped you guys out. That was super fun for me to do. If you have any ideas on what you want me to do for my next video, please let me know. I'd love to do it. I just want to do this for fun. And if you guys have an idea about a request on either a gear review or some particular thing you want me to do, please let me know and just drop it down below in the comment section and I'd love to get to it. So anyway, God bless you guys. Get out in the woods, enjoy God's creation and have fun. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.